Good morning again. I'm going to cover the last two schedules-based programs that GSA offers to state or local government. The first is called the Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program. Rather than repeat a bunch of what Carol said, I wanted to do sort of a comparison of how the Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program and the Cooperative Purchasing Program match up. That list of recommended ordering procedures, the eligibility list, who is allowed to access state or local governments, educational institutions, tribal nations is the same. It's the same, terms and conditions, same exceptions. The major difference between the Cooperative Purchasing Program and the Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program is the scope. Under cooperative purchasing, you have access to Schedule 70, Schedule 84 to purchase at any time for any reason using any funds available. Under Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program, state or local governments have access to all schedules, but only for the purpose of facilitating recovery from a major disaster, act of terrorism, biological or radiological or terrorist event. So that's going to be the main difference. Again, the source of funding does not matter. And I'll get into a little bit more detail this afternoon, but depending on the type of funding that you're using on any of these programs, if you're using grant funding and the grant funding comes with regulations and competitive procedures that you have to follow, using GSA doesn't waive those requirements. You still need to make sure to follow the rules of the grant funding that you're using to purchase items. The Disaster Recovery Purchasing Program came about in 2007 from the John Warner National Defense Authorization Act. And again, as I said, it's all GSA schedules, but only for the purpose of facilitating recovery from a major disaster or act of terrorism. And this afternoon, we have future expansion on this program that will be coming to be determined later this summer, early fall, based on legislation that was passed in October, and I will get into that again this afternoon. But for now, what you need to know is this is the scope of the program currently and how we're operating at this time. Now, I kept using the word facilitate recovery, so everyone always asks, well, does that mean I have to wait until the disaster hits to purchase? Well, no, there's a clause in the program that allows for what we call advanced purchasing, which means you can purchase in advance anything that's going to be used to facilitate recovery. And then everyone wants to know, well, what are those exact items? The other part of that is that the state or local government determines what those items are. So the purchasing entity is the one that justifies that it meets the scope, and they are the ones, because they know what every entity, whether you're in a floodplain or you're in an earthquake zone or you're in a fire area, you're going to need different things to facilitate recovery. So you as the purchasing entity make that determination. Again, just like cooperative purchasing in 1122, it's voluntary on the part of the state or local government. It's voluntary on the part of the GSA schedule contractor. You'll see I have that little disaster recovery icon up on all the slides. That's how you find out as a purchasing entity that the GSA contractor is participating in the program. They still have the ability to accept or reject an order at the order level, but that does denote that they have signed the modification to accept those contract term exceptions and that they are willing to accept orders. When you're purchasing through disaster recovery, you have access to our suite of GSA e-tools, our GSA Advantage, which is sort of like our Amazon.com, our eBuy, which is an online request for quote system, and eLibrary, which is our contractor catalog of contractors and where they're located, and it will link over to their Advantage file. So here's a snapshot of GSA eLibrary, and if you're ever looking for the state or local section or want to see what contractors are participating, I've circled on the right-hand side the state or local section of eLibrary. And this is the look. If those of you haven't been on Advantage in a while, this is the brand new look for our GSA Advantage buying tool. And I've circled the section for state or local governments on the bottom of the page. So that'll link you to seeing those contractors that have that COOP perch or disaster recov icons, so that you're only looking at the schedule contractors approved to sell to state or local governments. For more information, this is our program website. That's the FEMA disaster website if you want to know what disasters have been declared under the Stafford Act. FEMA lists the disasters on the webpage. And that is my maiden name, but that email will still work. My new email is patricia.scaglione. It's much more difficult. SCAGLIONE@gsa.gov. So to jump to the next and last schedules-based program, this one's got a doozy of a title. I blame legal because, you know, every word means something. It's the federal grantee access to schedules in response to public health emergencies. It again is only in response to, and it's declared public health emergencies as declared by Health and Human Services, by the Secretary of Health and Human Services. I've been asked before if this applies to state health emergencies. The answer, unfortunately, is no. This was a policy change that GSA made with interagency support from the White House, OMB, HHS, CDC, when H1N1 came about. And as you guys know, the Secretary of HHS tends to declare some of the public health emergencies when they think if and when it will be a major threat. So unlike a Stafford Act disaster, they don't have to wait for the tornado to hit. It's sort of a preparatory declaration. But with this program, you are limited as a state or local entity to purchasing with federal grant funding that is specifically related to the declared public health emergency. So the eligible users, it's that state and local government definition that we used for the other programs, but in addition, territorial governments are allowed to use this program as well. That includes Puerto Rico, Micronesia, Marshall Islands, etc. So it's a little bit broader of an access under this program. Because this program is so specific, we do have order language that's mandatory to be used on orders placed under this program, much like the 1122. And the order language basically states what the scope of the program is and that you're certifying as a state or local entity that you are using grant funding and you are purchasing under the appropriate scope of this program.